Hey, everybody. We're glad to see you here with us today. Welcome back to Inquiring Minds Want to Know, where you all get to ask the questions and we do our best to answer them. We've got some good questions today. I'm Tom Ingram here with Brian Jervis. How you doing, Brian?
Hey, I'm wonderful on a good spring day. I'm wonderful.
It's nice to see the sun out and be a little bit warmer and looking good. So let's get on with it here. Let's see what they're going to ask us, see if they can stump us today. These are from kids like you that ask these questions, and there's some good questions today, Brian. Maybe we'll have a stumper in there. But here's the question.
Good.
It says, how do you become a master gardener? Well, that's a very good question. How do you become a master gardener?
That is a good question. We love our master gardeners, and we've got quite a few here in Tulsa. And it's a pretty good process. And Tom has went through that process, and I think I'll just kind of let him tell you his process and kind of his thoughts and what he's done to become a wonderful master gardener. So, Tom.
Oh, shucks. Well, I'll just tell a little bit of my journey to become a master gardener. I've always kind of, been a part-time gardener, enjoyed growing vegetables. And one year I had like the best looking squash plants I'd ever had in my life. And I was feeling pretty good about it. And then like they just up and died in a couple of days. And so I started investigating what was going on with them. And I stumbled across the OSU Extension and this Master Gardener program that was coming up in about a month. So I signed up. But essentially, when you sign up to take the class, when you have to sign up, then there's an interview process. You have to be interviewed. They usually have about 100 or so people apply every year, and we can only accept about 40. So if you get accepted, you're in the class, and then it's time to go to school. We go to school at the OSU Extension. The OSU Extension is exactly what it sounds like. It's an extension of Oklahoma State University here in Tulsa County and every county in the state, really. I assume every county, most all counties, right?
Yep.
And but the Master Gardener program, professors from Oklahoma State University come over and they teach us things. It's a little bit of a commitment on time. It's about every Wednesday in the fall from 9 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. But they come over and they teach us about soil and flowers and vegetables and all those things that we need to know if we're going to be able to help people. And we study there at the extension office. There's some pictures there, and we got these nice demonstration gardens that you can see there. And so we learn all these things, and then our job is then to go out and help educate the community, spread good horticultural education, university-based information. And we do that in a lot of different ways. We go into the school classrooms, or we used to back when we could. We'll get doing that again, but coronavirus kind of put an end to that for a while. But we go out and we teach classes on worms and soil and trees and seeds and all these things in the elementary schools throughout Tulsa County. And we set up booths at festivals and parks and things to answer questions. We've got online resources to teach. We go into some nursing homes and help do some horticultural therapy in nursing homes. There's a part of town called Brookside down on Peoria, and we got a bunch of flower pots down there. We call that our Tulsa Blooms program. So there's lots of different things that the Master Gardeners do, but essentially it's a volunteer organization. We're grown-ups for the most part that have decided we wanted to go back to school to learn more about how to be a better gardener, not only for ourselves, but how to help others be a better gardener. And so that's what we do. And that's kind of why we're doing this right here, to help spread good information, because there's lots of crazy information out there. I don't know, you all probably aren't on these gardening sites, but I'll go on. It's just some of the questions are just crazy, and the answers are even more crazy sometimes.
So Tom, so you mean to tell me that you signed up to go back to school?
I signed up to go back to school. It's a problem I have.
Most everybody who's ready to get out of school and be done with school, but our master gardeners signed up to go back to school. So they are a little crazy, I think, sometimes. But no, that's kind of the opportunity that we have. You get to do something that you want to do. You may not want to go to history class or do math, but a lot of our folks love to do gardening. And so that's why they would sign up to go back to school. So crazy as it may, it's kind of a fun program, Tom. Tom, where did you get your love for gardening from? Where did you learn? When did you learn to garden?
I didn't really have anybody in my family teach me, but I always remember I had Uncle Benny. We'd go visit Uncle Benny every summer, and he had the best garden with just rows of strawberries and corn, and it was always so delicious. I was always so envious of him. And he's just one of those guys that just had a green thumb. Whatever he grew thrived, and he took care of it and all. But so that's, if I had to point. And then also, I think my grandmother, she always loved flowers. She always had a really beautiful flower garden with roses and peonies and all these things. And it's just kind of funny how those memories kind of get imprinted in you. And as a kid, I don't know, you're thinking, think so much about it. But then as you get older, you go like, well, that was really pretty cool. They were really good at that. I wonder if I could do this or not. But I'd say that's.
Yeah, and that's kind of similar to a lot. I mean, I got my love from my grandpa as well. He was a farmer and raised corn and potatoes and onions. I remember he would put a lot of onions in the ground, and he'd sell them at to his friends and at the markets and stuff. So I just remember those days where we got to go out and pull onions, and we would tie them up and hang them from the fence and let them dry where they would keep, and we could eat onions basically all summer and into the fall. So I just remember that as well, and it's just fun remembering those old times. And I bet some of you all watching this, I bet you can relate as well. I bet your grandmas or your grandpas or even your aunts and uncles, I bet you garden with them sometime. And so yeah, you may not appreciate it as much right now, but later on, that you'll get your love from gardening from them a lot of times. So cherish that. Enjoy working in the garden and getting your hands dirty and your fingernails dirty with your moms and dads and your family members and your aunts and uncles. So we sure enjoy it, but we're kind of nerdy in that sense anyway, Tom.
Well, I forgot to mention one pretty important part of what Master Gardeners do. We there at the Extension office, just a few steps from where you're sitting right there, we maintain a diagnostic center where we've got Master Gardeners there Monday through Friday from 9 to 4 about, and they answer the phone. They'll answer gardening questions. You can, if you've got a plant that's got something wrong with it, you can bring it in and show it to us, and we'll do our best to help you figure it out. We do soil sampling. People bring in samples of soil that we then send off to OSU, and they'll get back and know the exact nutrient levels in their soil so they can better take care of their soil. So with as popular as gardens are becoming, I mean, within the last 5 years or so, they really seemed like they kind of exploded, especially last year when everybody was kind of locked in at home and not a lot to do. Gardens have really gotten popular. So the Master Gardeners are a volunteer organization, but it's a great resource for the people of Tulsa County.
You bet.
All right. That's what a Master Gardener is, for better or worse. All right. Our next question here. This is another good question here. How much water is the right amount of water? And I assume that how much water is the right amount to water your yard or your flowers or your vegetables? And that's a question a lot of people ask. How much is enough? How much is too much?
It is. It's an important question too, and it's definitely important to think about beforehand because you can overwater a lot of different plants. Let's think of this flower pot inside. So we have an indoor plant that we're growing. Most of those indoor plants or most pots or containers have holes in the bottom of them. So, Tom, those holes are for when we water, that water runs out the bottom, and we want to do that to flush the water out. And then it's left with a good moist potting mix or potting soil. So, on a lot of our indoor plants that we have containers in, they have holes, so it's hard to overwater those plants. Now, the plants outside in the ground, we can overwater. We can water too much or we can water too less. When we don't water enough, that's easy. A lot of times they wilt down. They get kind of, dry looking. The leaves just kind of fold down. So that's telling us that we need to water. It's hard to guess an amount. But, as those wilt down, we give them a little water and they jump right back up. A lot of times, we had some snow this winter and we think that snow puts down a lot of water. Well, for every 10 inches of snow, and we had 10 inches, a lot of you had 10 inches of snow. So that's a little less than a foot. So for every 10 inches of snow, we get 1 inch of water. And so that keep that in mind. So, it does get dry in the wintertime. Think about the last few weeks or the last few months. We haven't had a lot of rain. We've had some snow, but not a lot of rain. So our plants outside do need some water during the wintertime. Now, some of you may be watching this in the early summer, and that's a little different because, April showers bring May flowers. So a lot of times Mother Nature's taking care of us, having to water. But when it gets warmer, we're going to have to start watering. We're going to see those plants wilting down a little more as it gets hotter and hotter outside. So, how much water is the right amount? And that is just enough. But that's not a very good answer, Tom. But I don't really know how else to answer those because plants use different amounts. So what's your thoughts on that, Tom?
Water is essential. And for me, I usually kind of tell people that the plants will kind of tell you how much water they need if you watch them. And when they kind of start to get a little droopy and drip and leaning down a little bit, they're telling you they need some more water. So that's a good time to water. But there's some general rules like a lawn, like you can see here, a lawn sprinkler. We've all probably seen those different times of the year. So, we have general rules like maybe about an inch a week will be good for that, or maybe 2 inches, depending on the type of grass. Different types of sprinklers. There's this portable one that was up there, but then there's this one that's a fixed installation where it sprays around. But then, Brian, here's one that's like the farmers use, and you told me the name of this, and I can't remember. It's got a fancy name. What do you call that?
Yeah, it's a pivot irrigation system. Pivot irrigation system. So this guy, see the wheels on the bottom of it, and it's ran by the power of the water. And as that sprinkler head goes around, this whole thing travels. It travels with this field, and it moistens or waters the plants this way. Now, those plants, you probably like corn, soybean, big, large field crops like that. Now, this wouldn't work very good on trees, would it? Because the tree limbs would get in the way. So these are crops that are, kind of below this irrigation system, maybe 3 or 4 foot, and it goes all the way around. So these pivots, they may run 24 hours a day, and they're pumping out of a river. They're pumping out of a deep water well to get that water. And think of how much water that plant uses, that whole field uses. It's a lot. It's a lot of swimming pools. So just keep that in mind that it does take a lot of water to grow our corn, to grow our soybeans or our other crops that we like to eat. But yeah, the pivot, we have a few pivots around. You're going to see more of these in farmland country, not necessarily in town.
Well, and for home, it's kind of cheating a little bit, but they do make these little devices that they have 2 prongs on it, like you see here in the picture, and a meter, and you can stick that down on the ground, and it'll register how much moisture is in the soil. And I know I have one of those for my houseplants because it's just easier than sticking my finger down in there to feel the dirt and see how it's doing, to just stick that in there and go, oh, they're thirsty. I need to water them. So there's lots of different ways. It's hard to say exactly how much water, because just like humans, I need more water than you do probably as a kid. Yep. So how much is the right amount of water? Well, the right amount of water is the right amount of water that we need, I guess is the way.
But that's a really good question, and it's a question that adults ask too. It's a tougher question because on the other end of that, Tom, we can overwater a tree, and you take a tree that's not used to being in wetter areas, wet ground, and it can drown. The roots can't survive. Look at the screen here, and there's a bald cypress, and you see these knees on this bald cypress in this swampy area. And what's happened, this tree has learned to survive in wet areas. So it can survive in swamps. It puts these knees up that helps it breathe a little bit in this wet area. So yeah, you may have seen these before, but not thought about it. And different plants, will survive in different conditions. And a bald cypress is an example of one that can survive in a wet area, wet swampy area. So that's just an example that come to mind, Tom.
So everybody wants a quick and easy answer, but you just kind of have to learn and experiment, and you'll figure it out. The plants
Absolutely.
tell you when they need water.
Absolutely.
I get thirsty. You get thirsty. You know you're thirsty when you get thirsty. Your plants get thirsty, and they will let you know. But that is a very good question. It's something that most grown-up gardeners struggle with. How much water is enough? Not too much water. All right. Good question. Thank you for that one. All
Yeah.
right. Here's our next question. How do you know what kind of seeds to plant in a garden? Well, that's a good question. I would say you would plant what you want to eat. You know, if you like tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers, then plant tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers. Doesn't make much sense to grow something you're not going to eat. What would you say, Brian?
Yeah, I like for kind of a starter gardener, probably like a lot of you all, I like easier things that grow pretty well and pretty quick. It really depends. A lot of you, I think something easy. I think radishes. Some of you may not care for radishes, so you don't want to plant them. But man, you can plant a packet of radish seeds, and then in 25, 30 days, you can have a radish that's ready to eat, ready to chop up in your salad or saute. So, versus, maybe a tomato using, everybody likes to plant tomatoes. So, or carrots. Those are a little more challenging to plant. So it kind of depends on, like you said, what you like to eat. And then what you may want to try. And then are they easy to plant? Are they easy to grow in Oklahoma? There may be some plants that, we can plant them, but they just won't do very good. Carrots come to mind, Tom. They're pretty easy to sprout and grow, but they don't like our Oklahoma summers. So that taproot, it doesn't fill out like it would in prime growing conditions, like we would grow them in Georgia, in Florida, where the weather is perfect and the soil is perfect. Not so much in Oklahoma. A lot of times, our weather gets tough to grow some harder crops. So it really just kind of depends. Like you said, we don't want to make it too difficult. Just try it, and if it doesn't work, let's try something else. Is one thing I like to say.
All right. Well, when you decide what you want to plant, you usually start with seeds, and those seeds come in packets like you see here, and they've got a lot of information on there on when to plant, how to grow, et cetera, and lots of different sizes of seeds. And oftentimes, Brian, it's hard to know what it is by looking at the seed unless you really are familiar. Like these two, here's a picture right here. Person's got a handful of seeds. I wouldn't know what it is to look at it, but those are canola seeds, which is a farm crop.
An oil. Yeah.
They plant to grow those. And then these, of course, we know what this would be. This would be corn on the cob, because that looks exactly like corn. So some of them are easy to identify. Some aren't so easy to identify. But we usually it all starts with the seed once we decide what we want to grow.
Tom, that brings back the school memories. When I was in college, we had to identify 100 different vegetable seeds.
Oh,
and not the vegetables, but the seeds themselves. So, some of them are not too difficult. You've seen pepper seeds when you take a bite of a pepper and you see the little seed in there. And so you can get pretty close like that, but some of them, it's hard. I mean, some of them may be little bitty and very difficult. So, it all kind of, again, it all depends on, luckily, a lot of them are in packages that has pictures, and then you can get them out there and plant them. It works well.
Right. I mean, bottom line, how do you know what to grow? I'd say grow what you want to eat. And even if we're talking about vegetables, the same way with flowers. If you want to plant some flowers or something, if you wanted to attract pollinators, butterflies, well, you would plant a flower that would attract butterflies. There's lots of different ones. It just depends on what you want and what you like.
Yeah, and that brings up a point, not necessarily, when we say planting seeds, not necessarily vegetable seeds, but we could have a flower garden. Like you said, a butterfly garden. There's different plants that the butterflies will be attracted to. So, yeah, you'll do a little studying, a little trying to figure out what kind of plants will attract butterflies, and then you'll go try to find the seeds. And if timing's right and everything's good, then we'll plant them. So, yeah, it's lots of different options out there on seeds.
Right. Well, this next question kind of springs off what we're talking about here. It says, is it better to start plants from seed or to purchase plants that are already growing? And we have both those options.
Another really, really good question. And, you go out to your nursery and they're going to have both. They're going to have seed packets, the seed packets that they'll have. And if it's early enough in the year, they'll have a lot of different options to choose from, have pretty flowers on the packets or vegetables or whatever you're after. And then they'll also have transplants where the nurseries have done the hard work, where they've went out and planted those seeds for tomatoes and peppers. The nursery started planting those in February and March to have them ready for you in April and May. So the nurseries are out there in the spring planting seeds, getting them to grow to get ready for everybody to plant. So, the nursery should have everything out there for you. And then you can pick and choose, if you have time to wait, if you want to plant some cucumbers by seed, it may take a week, 7 days for them to germinate, to come up. And then it may take another 2 or 3 weeks for them to start growing to get ready to produce. So that's 3 weeks where you could buy those transplants already planted by the nursery, and you could save yourself 3 weeks by planting the transplants. So options, there's a lot of different options out there, and that's what the nurseries like, because the nurseries want you to be successful as well. So lots of options, Tom.
Well, and there's some plants, I think that in our growing locale here, they maybe do a little better if we start them as transplants, and others do a little better if we start them as seeds. But the one big difference is the pricing of doing that. You can buy a pack of seeds with maybe 50 to 100 seeds in it for $4.50, that somewhere in there. Whereas just like one single tomato plant may cost you $4 or $4.50 or whatever. So you got one plant versus maybe 50 plants from the seed. So the money makes a difference, but a lot of us will just go start some from seed and then just buy some others that are already transplants, like you've seen these pictures that are growing, and they're maybe 6 or 8 inches tall and they're ready to go into the ground. It depends on how organized we are, I guess. I still haven't started my seeds, but I will.
Yep, for sure. So yeah, just go. I'd suggest going to the nursery or doing some, looking at some videos and seeing what you want to do and just doing it. You're not going to mess it up. You're going to be successful however you do it.
Right. And if you are really interested in starting to grow some things, on our website, TulsaMasterGardeners.org, we've got lots of good information there on growing vegetables, on timelines, when to plant, how long it is to harvest, etc. So if you go to our website, you can find all that information, and you guys can start growing your own garden if you want to. Sounds good to me.
You bet.
All right. These are tricky questions here. This is our next question. It says, how long can a plant live? Well, in some people's homes, not very long. Some people would seem like they just buy them and they take them home and they don't live very long. But if they're taken care of, some plants can live for a year, but that's what they're supposed to do. And others can live a long time. Right, Brian?
Yeah, that's right. So, when we think of this, we first think of annuals and perennials. So an annual, we have to plant it every year. If it has to be planted every year, it has to be planted annually. So usually a frost will kill it, will stop its life cycle, or coming up this spring, it'll get too warm and then they'll die because it's too warm, because it was growing in the winter. So we have annuals, and then on the other flip coin of that is the perennials. Perennials we put in the ground and they come back every year, so we don't have to plant them annually. They're perennials, so they pop back up out of the ground. So those kind of the two terms there that we use a lot of times. But so you get plants that may live a few weeks, and then I think, Tom, you've got some pictures of some old redwoods that probably over in California or on the West Coast that can grow 500 years, 1,000 years, even longer. So, it really depends. So, it's kind of like, in the animal world, it depends on how long they're going to, some will live longer than others, Tom. So you was kind of looking at redwoods and know a little bit about them. What did you find out on them?
Well, this picture here, you look at this redwood, they're huge trees. You can look at it compared to that Jeep down there. But
man, that's a big one.
It's a big tree. And some of those, you actually got a tunnel through you can drive through. But 1,000, 2,000 years isn't unusual for those redwoods. But there's also a tree called the bristlecone pine that will live for 5,000 years. And that's a long time right there. But most of our plants that we got in our yards and things don't last that long. Like Brian say, an oak tree that I've got in my front yard. How long would you expect that oak tree to live?
So, if we're doing everything correctly, you're looking at 100 to maybe 200 years old on an oak tree. But a lot of times, a good big mature oak tree, is probably planted when the houses around there was planted. So 50 years old, 75 years old is not uncommon. But some trees may not last 5 years, 10 years. So, yeah, so it really all depends on the species of that, what kind of tree that is.
So again, kind of like our water question, it depends. It depends. Yeah, well, and that's probably a misconception people have. They buy a plant, they think they're going to have it forever. And it's just not the way it works.
Yep. But that's a good question. That's a good question.
For that, and then our last question involves a plant that I'm not really very fond of. I've encountered it before, and it was not a pleasant experience. We're talking about poison ivy, but the question is, what does poison ivy do to people? And it's not a good thing it does to people.
Poison ivy is one of those that I love most all plants, and poison ivy is one that I don't necessarily care for too much. Poison ivy they put off an oil on their leaves and on their stems and even in their roots. That oil, a lot of people are allergic to that oil. And if you see the picture here, you see those blisters on that arm. Those blisters are the reaction, our humans' reaction to that oil. So maybe they reached in to get a ball out of a flower bed or a fence row, and that ball had, in reaching through there, they had some plants, and they've got that oil on their arms or on the ball, and it was transferred that way. So that oil caused a reaction that made you itch. And depending on the person, some people almost have to go to the hospital sometime because they are so allergic to that oil. And then on the other hand, some folks may not be allergic to that oil at all. So it all depends. But a lot of times we've got to treat those leaves of 3. And again, you can see this leaf on the screen. You see those 3 leaflets, leaves of 3, leave it be. We always hear that in Boy Scouts, and maybe grandma or grandpa saying that, or mom and dad, but leaves of 3, leave it be. So if they have leaves of 3, then we probably need to leave it alone.
One thing I guess we would say, if you think you see the leaves of 3, leave it be, and then go find an adult or somebody there that you can tell. And hopefully they'll know how to get rid of it and take care of it. But if they don't, we've got information on our website again that will show you how to do that. But the bottom line is to stay away from it. There's only one way to find out if you're allergic, and that's to get it. And none of us want to do that. It's not very fun because it's really, really itchy. And I don't enjoy itching at all.
That is a good question, and hopefully not a lot of you have had it. But if you have, you can usually get some cream. Your mom or dad or whoever can help you out. Try to, get an anti-itch cream or something like that, and that should help you pretty well.
Bottom line, what do we always say? Leaves of 3, leave it be. And that's just the way it is.
That's it.
All right. Well, that's the end of our questions here for today, Brian. Thanks for being here. We will see you all again next week with some more questions, and have a good week. See you later.
Y'all enjoy. Have a good week. Take care.